Hey guys, John here. I hope you're all doing well. In today's video, we are going to try 6 different speakers with my Mesa Boogie rectifier. And we're just going to see which of the speakers that I've picked for this comparison sound the best with this amplifier for a nice, modern, high-gain tone. Now, as per usual with my speaker comparisons, we're going to use the Celestion Vintage 30 as speaker 1. So that's the baseline, basically. That's a Chinese-made 8-ohm vintage 30 that I use a lot and that I love a lot. And I'm basically going to compare that to the other 5 speakers. Now, the other 5 speakers that we're going to do today are the Hesu Demon, the Warehouse Retro 30, the Celestion G12K-100, which is discontinued sadly, the Mojotone BV-30V, and the Eminence Governor speaker. And I think that they all sound kind of good with the rectifier. If you want to skip to the segments where I compare the speakers, check out the time codes in the description below. And by the way, if you want IRs of all my speakers, which are currently 31 speakers, you can get those in my web store, which I will also link below. And of course, all the speakers in this video are available there as well. Now, a couple notes about the signal chain and all that good stuff. So the guitar that I'm using is my Valiant Jupiter with the bare knuckle polymath pickups in it, tuned to drop C sharp, going into the Mesa Boogie single rectifier series 1 on the red channel on the modern mode, which is my favorite rectifier setting for high gain. Sounds nice, thick, and sizzly up top. This is quite a tight sounding rectifier, so I think that it sounds really good. It's my favorite Mesa Boogie rectifier, basically. And the amp is going to be fed into my Grossmann Fatbox 1x12, my ISO cab that I love and use almost every single day. I load up all the speakers in that cabinet, and for this comparison, I'm using the exact same mic positions, the same settings on the amplifier, and the same mic levels as well. I'm using 3 mics, 2 SM57s and 1 MD421 sent into the DAW, and I did apply a low cut for all the speakers at, I think, 82 Hertz, if I remember correctly. All right, let's go ahead and get started, and let's compare the Celestion Vintage 30 8-ohm. By the way, all the speakers in this comparison are 8-ohm, forgot to mention that. We're going to compare that to the Hesu Demon speaker, which is a speaker that is great for metal. I've used it from time to time, and I really do enjoy that speaker a lot. So let's go ahead and take a listen and see what the differences are. Check it out. All right, that was interesting. Both sounded great. I felt that the Demon was a little bit on the scooped side, you know. It does have a nice sort of growl and a big thumpy low end, but perhaps for the rectifier, the Vintage 30 is a bit of a better fit because of that mid-range hump. This is a scooped amplifier. But I did find that the Hesu Demon works really well with amps that have a little bit more mid-range. That's where I think it shines. So it's a great metal speaker with a great roar and snarl going on. And I do really enjoy it. If it's better for this particular amplifier, I don't know. I really do like the V30 here. But it's a good alternative for sure for a different flavor. But again, I think that this speaker is better suited for amps that have a little bit more mid-range going on, since it's a little bit on the scooped side, which does make it great for metal when you pair it with the right amplifier, of course. Now we are going to compare the Celestion Vintage 30 to the Warehouse Retro 30 speaker, another interesting speaker that I've used recently a couple times. I think the speaker sounds really good, and it's going to be interesting to see how well it performs with the rectifier and in comparison to the V30. Let's take a listen. Interesting, a very different character than the last one, right? What I noticed about this speaker is that the low-end resonant frequency is a little bit different than on the V30. So it does sound quite punchy, if you know what I mean. The mid-range has a nice snarl and presence, but the V30 has a bit more thump in the bottom end because of that different resonant frequency, if I'm hearing that correctly anyway. But I do also really like this speaker. And of course, I also want to know your thoughts, right? So the Retro 30 is kind of like a brighter version of their other speaker, the Veteran 30, which is kind of based on the V30. It's supposed to be a better version of the V30. So the Retro 30 is kind of similar. It has a bit of a different vibe going on. But I do think that it sounded really good here. It's just a different type of sound, again, and it fits the mix in a different way. Let me know your thoughts, of course. Now let's move on to another Celestion, the G12K-100. Now this is a speaker that is well known. You know, it's been used by many famous artists. However, they have discontinued this speaker for some reason. I don't know why, but I think that it's a cool sounding speaker. So let's just go ahead and compare the V30 to the K100. Check it out. All right, so I think that the K100 or the G12K100 sounded quite balanced. and quite good. It's a little bit more laid back than the V30. You know, the V30 has that bite, you know, and those upper mid-range spikes, if you will. The K100 is a little bit more relaxed in the upper mids and stuff, but it still has a very nice presence and a nice balance, which I do really enjoy, actually. So, you know, this is a very safe speaker to bet on, and the wattage is higher as well than the V30. So if you like the sound of this speaker and you want one or multiple in your cabinet, you're going to have to, you know, look for stores that still have them in stock or on the used market. But I think that this is an excellent speaker indeed. Now let's check out the Mojotone BV-30V, which, if I'm correct, is also kind of based on a V30. I think it's supposed to sound like an older, more worn-in V30, if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. This is the only speaker of Mojotone that I currently have, but I really wanted to try it in this video with the rectifier. So let's see how it compares to the V30. Check it out. All right, great. So that one was definitely a bit darker. It does have a very large bottom end, so it's very thumpy indeed. It's a little bit on the muddy side, you know, especially when you hear it next to a V30, which is so cutting and forward sounding. So it definitely does sound more warm, vintage, and worn in, if you will. And that is really nice if you have an amplifier that needs a bit of taming in the top end or in the upper mids. In this case, is it better than the V30? I'm not sure. I guess it will really depend on your taste. And of course, you know, I didn't change the amp settings just so you guys could really hear the differences between the speakers, but you could also just bump up the presence a bit to open the amplifier up so that it sounds a little bit better with this speaker. Not that it sounded bad, but it's a little bit too warm for my taste in comparison to the V30 here. But yeah, it definitely is a good speaker to have in the arsenal. And finally, I wanted to feature a speaker by Eminence, and we're going to do the Eminence Governor, which is a very interesting speaker too. And let's just see how that sounds in comparison to the V30. Take a listen. Very cool. This one also had a nice character. Just as most, if not all, the Eminence speakers that I've tried, it has a very MIDI sound. It's a bit darker, so smoother up top, nice and chunky in the low end as well. Not bad. Again, just as the previous speaker, this is a good speaker for taming, you know, an amplifier that has a little bit too much fizz, for example, or a little bit too much of those upper mids going on. But despite the fact that it's a little bit darker, I think that it still sat in the mix quite nicely. And again, you know, if you're going to use that speaker in your cabinet, you're very likely going to just adjust your amplifier to that speaker. So you might raise the treble or the presence a little bit to compensate for that smoother tone, right? So that was this comparison. I really enjoyed it. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while, so I'm glad that I got it done now. I'd love to know your thoughts. Which speaker in this video spoke to you the most, or was the V30 still the best? Let me know. And again, if you want IRs for all the speakers that I have, including the ones in this video, check out my web store in the description below. Please also hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, as that really helps the channel out. And if you want to support this channel, you can do so by buying something at my affiliate links for Thomann, Sweetwater, or TubeAmp Doctor, and at no additional cost. And that will, you know, help out the channel, and that is always very much appreciated. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.